Hello everyone and welcome to How to Get Hired. My name is Matty Ryan and I will be your host for today's session. This is the first episode of a three-part series for all of you in Greater Manchester and beyond, if you're watching, looking to secure work. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to run through a really simple exercise that will get all of you watching thinking about the fantastic strengths that you have and how you can show them off to employers. We'll also be putting all of your burning questions about job hunting to our fantastic panel. So as you're following along at home, keep those comments and questions coming in. So let's kick straight off and meet all of our fantastic guests. Hi everybody, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hi everyone.
Hi. Let's just do some quick fire introductions. Charlie, would you kick us off?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Hi everyone, my name's Charlie Welch and I used to be in the army. I know I don't look very military. It was only for 6 years and then I became a trainer and a facilitator and I love working with people, and that's in universities, in the corporate sector. And then about 4 years ago, we set up a business called FlyingStartXP and we've been working with the Prince's Trust, enabling employability and building business brilliance.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Charlie. Izzy, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Izzy Panton. I am Head of Student Recruitment and Admissions at University Academy 92. If you hadn't heard of us before, we are a new university situated right by Old Trafford and Trafford Cricket Ground in Manchester. And we were founded by the class of 92 who are successful Manchester United footballers and businessmen. So Gary Neville's one of them. I'm not sure how big a football fans we've got on the call today, but our degrees were awarded by Lancaster University, but we deliver our teaching in a deliberately different way that's better suited to people like me and you, and not like a traditional uni. I'm new to the uni, but it's been a really incredible few weeks and I hope to get to work with Matty and the Prince's Trust more over the coming months and years. And I just want to say thank you for having me today, and I hope that it's really useful and insightful. And if you have any questions following this, please just drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks ever so much, Izzy. And finally, we have Will, who is one of our amazing young people currently on programme with us here at the Prince's Trust. Will, would you give a quick introduction to yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Will. I have been on the Prince's Trust course for around 4 months now, and I am a film school graduate from the University of Central Lancashire, graduated 2019. And I got in touch with the Trust because I was looking at developing a brand for my own film business. And since then, I've been looking at other opportunities and work just through the contacts and all the guidance I've had with them.
Wonderful. Thank you, Will. It's lovely to have you and all of you here with me today for our first ever episode, which is titled Discovering Your Strengths. So our first episode is all about uncovering just that, and our brilliant panel are going to help all of you watching discover your strengths. So first and foremost, I'd love to turn to the panel with our first question, which is, why is it so important to be aware of your strengths? Charlie, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key reason is because it's going to help you find a job that really suits you. So you might see that employers are looking for lots and lots of different skills, but if you know the ones that really energize you, that make your eyes light up, then you can go hunting for jobs that enable you to do that. Thanks, Matty.
No problem. Izzy, what about from your perspective? Why is it so important to be aware of your strengths, particularly from maybe more of an employment perspective?
Yeah, I think there's 3 reasons really that all tee up to making you a stronger employee. And firstly, it makes you feel more confident, and we all portray the best versions of ourselves when we feel confident and when we're really aware of our abilities. So that's something called conscious competence, when we know our strengths and we play to them. Secondly, I think knowing your strengths helps us to understand our potential pathways better. So from an employment perspective, we can identify roles and careers that are best suited to where we feel our strengths are. And finally, I think that being aware of our strengths allows us to sell our strengths. But what I mean by that is that we're able to set ourselves apart from the competition when we're able to sort of position a combination of our characteristics that make us really unique and special and memorable. So it's a really important exercise really from an employability perspective.
Absolutely. Yes, really great insight. Will, how about you? You're on a journey now with the trust, kind of discovering your strengths. Why is it so important for you to know what your strengths are?
I think much kind of what Charlie said is kind of what I've learned over my time with the Prince's Trust, actually, which is before, I guess I kind of came out thinking, oh, I've got loads of skills, I can do loads of jobs. But it's actually through sort of identifying my skills, it's helped me recognize which opportunities are really right for me. And I guess sort of looking back now, I look at some interviews I've been in, and you know, sometimes I feel like I've done really well in them, and other times I've not been so confident in them. And I think that's often because I wasn't sort of going for a role where I felt it was native for my strengths, and it wasn't going forward. So it's helped me to be a lot more discerning, I think, in my job search, and I guess more fulfilled in the work I am doing as well.
Love that, Will. That's absolutely great. So I think it's safe to say that we know that it's vital to know what your strengths are. But how do you actually find out what your strengths are? Well, we've prepared a really simple exercise for all of you to follow along with at home. And just so it's fair, our panel are going to play along as well. So it might help if you grab a pen and paper just so you can follow along at home. And on your screen, you should see, coming up now, a list of many different words. Now, there are hundreds of different strengths and skills out there in the world, but this is just a little exercise to get you thinking and connecting with some of the top and most common strengths that employers are typically looking for. So to help you out, we've compiled this list with some help from our wonderful friends at StrengthScope. So spend a moment just reading over these words. Some of them might just jump off the screen to you straight away. Maybe they remind you of when someone's given you a compliment. Or perhaps your friends have told you, for example, that you're a super creative person. Or maybe you know that you're very enthusiastic and full of energy. Perhaps you're always the one to take initiative when solving problems. Or perhaps your common sense always ensures that you have the right solution at the right time. So just have a moment looking at those words and really reflecting on them. And all I want you to do with your pen and paper is write 7 of those words down. This can be quite a tricky exercise to just to look at it because there's so much going on here. So Charlie, have you got any top tips that you might recommend just to help us get thinking about which strengths we connect with? Because there might be some people watching who think, I've no idea where to start. I've no idea which of these strengths apply to me.
Yeah, absolutely, Matty. So I know that every single one of you watching has your own native genius. And by that, I mean this set of strengths that give you energy. So as you're reading through these words, think about, in my life, maybe in work or maybe at home, which of this stuff do I do effortlessly? I don't even think about doing it. I just do it very naturally, and it energizes me to do it. And I look around and other people don't seem to find the same thing. If you can work out what that is for you. So it might be, for example, empathy, that you're just a really good listener and people love being with you because you really get it for them. Or it might be, for example, detail orientation. You might be excellent at analysing and weighing up the pros and cons, and your friends come to you to, I can't make this decision, can you help me? For decisiveness, for example. So just which of those words make your eyes light up and you think, do you know, I'm actually pretty good at that. Doesn't matter about my qualifications, doesn't matter about anything else, but these things I can really do, because that's what you're hunting for.
Fantastic. That's really great insight, Charlie. And just to follow up on that, I've had a great comment here from Jake, who's watching. Is there such a thing as having too many strengths? Because there might be people at the other end of the spectrum who think, you know, actually, I think I connect with all of these strengths in a certain way. Could employers react to that as negative? What would be your advice on that? What's the purpose of kind of narrowing it down to just 7 at the moment?
So is that for me, Matty?
Yeah, we're just off the back of what you were saying.
Okay, so I think having loads of strengths is wonderful, but employers very often, when they're looking to fill a slot, are looking for somebody with a particular set of strengths. And if you can be clear and have stories to tell and genuine, authentic examples of each one, you're going to stand out, just like Izzy was saying, from the rest. So it's a really good idea, if you can, to just say, I might be great at all of these, and that's fantastic, but which are the ones that energize me and that I would love to do all day long?
Wonderful, thank you. So I hope you've had enough time to be looking over this word wall and you've got 7 words written down in front of you. And now what we're going to do is challenge you even further to narrow it down to just 3. Can you circle your top 3 strengths out of that list of 7? And everyone on the panel will be doing this as well, because I'm going to come to you and find out what your top 3 strengths are. So once you've chosen your top 3 strengths, share them with us in the comments, because we'd love to see what you picked. And as Charlie mentioned, you might feel a connection to many of these words, but try your best to choose just your top 3 that you think, I've got some really great examples, or somebody's given me feedback and described me in that way before. That's a really solid example of strength that you're living on a regular basis. So while you're going through that challenge of trying to narrow it down to just 3, I'm going to turn to our panel. I'll leave the words on the screen for all of you at home at the moment. And let's just think about some of our panels. So Will, I'd love to come to you first, if I may, and just talk around what 3 strengths you picked.
So I chose enthusiasm, collaboration, and empathy. And I chose these because I had sort of an experience where I really felt like I recognized these and discovered these within myself, actually. It was at university in my final year, where I was making a film with some people and I was producing it, and it was kind of new territory for me, really. And it had to be crowdfunded and I had to recruit for it and then see it through. And I guess enthusiasm was what I realized kind of got me through it when it got really difficult, you know, because again, a lot of things go wrong in a situation like this. And I guess, you know, it taught me that some things that I hadn't followed through on, there was a reason I followed through on this one, and it's because I had the enthusiasm for it. And I think what helps a lot with that was the collaboration. It was a lot of departments, a lot of different people working together, and that required a lot of, you know, communicating and managing, which was difficult at times. But I actually realized I fed off the energy of those people, and that was just kind of something I needed in any kind of environment I was working in. To fully realize my potential. And I think hand in hand went with that was the third one, empathy, which, you know, obviously it was very stressful at times, and sort of sometimes you need a shoulder to cry on and people need to cry on your shoulder. And I think realizing that I had that ability to help, you know, support people when they needed it and also help kind of mediate sort of things together really, you know, made me understand how important that was to my kind of workspace. And in the end, you know, I knew they had been strengths in a successful, you know, action, because the film came out to a really high standard and everyone we all performed really well and we pulled together and we relied on each other, and we got really good reception for it. So those are my 3: enthusiasm, collaboration, and empathy.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing your story there, Will, as well. It sounds like when you were really living those strengths, it was really giving you the energy, just kind of harkening back to what Charlie and Izzy were saying there as well. Izzy, I'd love to turn to you and just find out what your top 3 strengths were.
Yeah, so mine were resilience, optimism, and compassion. With resilience, it's a difficult one because people sometimes feel less resilient, other people feel more resilient. But for me, resilience has always been a framework of rapid goal setting. I've done that in really commercial roles, sales roles that were really difficult, cold calling people that didn't want to speak to me. But it built my resilience, definitely. But actually what I realized, it wasn't the environment that I was in that was making me resilient. Sorry, it was the mechanisms that I used to cope with the knockbacks that made me feel resilient. And I've applied that to everything now. So there's very little that can knock me down. But if it does, I know what I need to do to get back up again. And I apply that to my professional life and my personal life too. It's a really good tool. But resilience has become such a buzzword, particularly in this climate. And fundamentally, it's just the ability to set that next goal, to overcome whatever it is that set you back a little bit. I've probably given it away, but that it ties in with optimism, an unbridled level of optimism that I count my blessings every day. I write down one thing I'm grateful for every day, and it gives me really perfect perspective. So no matter when something is a little bit negative or tough, I have this unwavering optimism that it will get better again. And you know, again, in my sales roles that I've had in the past, I'm now in higher education, which is a lovely environment to be in compared to sort of the pace at which I worked previously. But this optimism has put me in good stead, because I say yes to everything. I figure out how to do things later on, and it's afforded me promotions that potentially I wasn't ready for, but I got because I was open to them and optimistic in my abilities. And then lastly, compassion. So I chose compassion for a number of reasons, but I think having resilience can sometimes harden you to emotional intelligence and empathy. And I am actively compassionate in that I try and have a random act of kindness, or give a random act of kindness every day. Sometimes it's tiny, sometimes it's FaceTiming my nana when she doesn't expect it, and other times it's giving someone in my team really good feedback, even though they've not asked for it, just to let them know that they're doing a good job. So I think I chose compassion to balance out the quite driven characteristics of my other two, but compassion for me is something that I actively focus on to make sure I'm well-rounded and I'm helping develop the people around me too.
I love that, Izzy. That's really great. And it's really interesting to see how the strengths that you're utilizing in the workplace are bleeding over into the way that you live your everyday life. And it's actually a real source of, it sounds like a real source of motivation for you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So really great to know your strengths. And very finally, I'm going to go to Charlie. If you would be so kind as to share your top 3 strengths with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So my top 3 strengths are optimism. Again, there's a bit of enthusiasm in there, you can tell, but it's about collaboration and creativity for me. So I just thought I'd tell you a story about how using my strengths helped me to really overcome a current problem that I was facing. And I know we're going to talk a little bit later about motivation, so just sort of bear this in mind. So before lockdown, I was sitting at the dining table, which was my office, with my usual office space, which was a very small cupboard. And you'd think, having been in the army, that I'd be really organised and really detail orientated. But no. At work, yeah, absolutely on it. But my home, no. My filing system was a complete nightmare. And one day I opened the very small cupboard, and a bit like a volcano, the filing tray just sort of slid out, all that paperwork onto the wooden floor. I'm not going to lie, I did cry actually, because it was horrible. You know, I won't tell you how old I am, but at my age, you sort of would have thought that you'd got that mastered by now, wouldn't you? But I didn't. And I thought, okay, in that moment, I thought, how can I use my strengths to overcome this? What can I do? So I thought collaboration. All right, who do I know who is really good at this thing that I'm struggling with? And I reached out to 2 friends of mine. One of them's a virtual PA, and the other one is mad as a box of spiders, but she's got to-do lists up the yin-yang and all that ticking off business, which I should do, but don't do as often as I should. Anyway, she came down to stay with me, and she wrote me little notes like this that I thought you might like to see. It says, please file me away, do it in one go, and don't get distracted. So collaboration makes me smile because I've got that now and I stick it on my laptop. But then I thought, okay, so she helped me with my organisation, and the virtual PA helped me get sort of stuff and resources and materials that I needed. I secured a little room in the house. We had to do a bit of shuffling about, but knowing for lockdown that this would be the case. And then I thought, okay, creativity. What can I do that will make me feel enthusiastic and optimistic about my filing? So you can probably see my color-coded books up there. That was a bit of a laugh. And then I did this. I'm going to have to take my earphones out, but I color-coded my folders. And so having color-coded my folders, I now love filing, and I really, really look forward to it. So that's another reason for knowing your strengths and how they can help.
I think that's a great example, Charlie, of well-being, you know, and how your strengths can really play into your well-being. When you're really thinking and reflecting on utilizing your strengths to the best possible ability, you're going to be at the best level and feeling really good about yourself as well, and avoid those volcano moments, you know. So I think that's a really, really great example. Let's just have a very quick look at some of the comments coming in, because some of our wonderful young people who are watching have been contributing. So see, Natalie's put creativity, empathy and optimism. We're a very optimistic and empathetic bunch here, it seems, but that's a really wonderful blend that you have there. We also have Rakesh, who's put his top 3 strengths there: optimism, creativity and empathy. Again, like exactly the same. So it's really interesting to see that blend of strengths there. And then finally, let's go to Anna, who said initiative, empathy, and creativity. So again, you can see really people starting to think and connect with just these top 3 strengths. And that's not to say that the 7 that you wrote down don't apply to you, but these are the ones that you're going to be leading with, and probably the ones you have really strong stories and evidence for when you go into a job interview situation, or when you're handling any sort of crisis or any kind of day-to-day activity. It's a really useful thing to reflect on. So that's absolutely fantastic. So now that we've got our top 3 strengths, I think it'd be really great to turn some questions to the panel. And I'd really like to know, how do I use my strengths to find the job that's right for me? How do I use the strengths to find the job that's right for me? So now for all of our wonderful people that have got their top 3 strengths, how can that really help them with finding a job? Izzy, would you be okay to take that one first?
Yes, certainly. So I think that certain jobs, you mentioned it earlier, Matty, certain jobs require sort of a combination of strengths that are most pertinent and relevant to the job itself. So I think the best thing to do, and I've done it myself before, and it relates to the person earlier who asked, what are too many strengths such a thing? I would personally rank your strengths, and maybe you do it in gold, silver and bronze, and you identify what each strength group allows you to pursue. So maybe your strengths are creativity, initiative, and innovation. So what you need to do then is to do your research and look into the industries that purport that those things are integral to that industry itself. And then it's a matter of deciding which roles or facets within those industries are actually most relevant to maybe your silver or your bronze strengths. So I think if you pick your gold strengths, the ones that are non-negotiable, the ones that you feel as though define you and help shape who you are, use them to locate an industry that's most appropriate to you, and then work backwards. That way it helps shape your career path in a way that's sort of putting what you prioritize first and then making sure that it ticks a number of other boxes thereafter.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Izzy. Really good advice. Charlie, how do I use my strengths to find the job that's right for me? How would you interpret that as a coach? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
So yeah, really interesting, really interesting, because I think the fact that you have social media in supporting your job hunt, it might not feel like it when you're trawling through the job sites every day, but actually you've got access there, and you've got tools that you can use to bring your strengths to the notice of the employers. So for example, whether you're talking about LinkedIn or Indeed or any of those sites, they will be using algorithms, and they will be hunting for people with specific skills. So what you can do is you can sprinkle your strengths throughout your LinkedIn profile, really highlight them. You might, if you like, even put them in your under your headline. I know some Prince's Trust youngsters have had success because they've just put their name and then their key strengths underneath. And they're looking for work and branding on the bottom. So definitely, I would say use your strengths in all communications that you have, because it's not just that, it's your online CV and it's the covering letter that you write. If you're talking about what you're authentically great at and what you love to do, that will come through in the voice that you use.
Mm-hmm. Can I just add to what Charlie said, sorry, because I missed a point where it makes brilliant sense that on LinkedIn and your profiles, I used to find it difficult to share content that I thought would be thought-provoking or interesting. So what I took to doing was find articles that I thought were really interesting and also reflected the things that I'm passionate about, the areas that I'm strong in, and I would take snippets of those articles and use that as the headline if I couldn't think of anything. And I started to consistently share content of that nature on my LinkedIn, because then it shows that I'm interested in the areas that I look to pursue, and it links up with your personal brand and highlighting your strengths in your profile. If you do that, it shows that you're a little bit more invested in the areas that you want to go into in your career.
Absolutely. I think it's really about shaping and defining what kind of platform you're giving yourself, isn't it? And your strengths can really help you do that. Will, what about you? What do you think? How would you use your strengths to find a job that's right for you? You got any experience of that?
Yeah. I think one great thing is that, right now it's so easy to be able to actually ask employers what they are looking for. And any sort of company you go out and find that's looking for jobs will have their own set of values, and you can ask them what those values are and learn about them. And particularly for something like an interview situation, you can say to them, these are my strengths. Do you think someone like me would be well suited to a position here, the position you're looking for? And I think it's good to hear that back, because although sometimes you might think, oh well, if I tell them my strengths and they say that's not what we're looking for, I won't get the job. I think what I've learned is I definitely feel like I'm much more enthused in an interview and have to do it when I know that I'm in it. And I think it is possible to be in an interview room that really you shouldn't be in, because it's not going to give you what you need professionally, and it's not going to sort of fulfill you. So I think a great thing is to make, if you are in an interview, turn the interview around, ask them, would I be good for you? Because it's as much an interview for you finding out if they're right for you as it is the other way around.
Absolutely, and I think it kind of points to what Charlie was saying earlier about really looking at a company's, like, what is the company actually looking for in terms of the strengths that they've advertised? Because it's really easy to think, oh, I've got to tick every box, but actually, if you're really honing in on what your strengths are, if you can find a company that's listing those strengths specifically in the job description, because many of them do, is automatically going to be a stronger fit. That's really great insight for everyone. Thank you very much. I'd love to know now how we might communicate our strengths in an interview. Has anyone got any kind of top tips or guidance for how we would communicate our strengths in an interview? Who wants to take that one first?
I'll go.
Well, no,
I think,
go ahead.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think what's important in an interview is to signpost your strengths. So to use terminology that is really positive and enforces that is your strength. So sometimes people have a tendency to say, I feel like my area of strength is, or I feel like I'd be good at that because, and instead it's knowing that you'd be good at something. So be proud of your strengths, know them. And when you're in an interview and you may be asked a situational question, always link that situation back to your strength by signposting. So saying something like, I was able to achieve this because I am, or other positive affirmations of that nature, allows you to signpost where your strengths lie. And if you deliver them in a way that is confident and with conviction, people don't question whether that's your strength or not, because you're owning it. And I've always found that I've embodied confidence the most when I signpost my strengths, because I know I've left that interview sort of highlighting or reiterating the areas that I feel like I can thrive in.
That's great. Will, did you want to take the next bit? So how do you communicate your strengths in an interview?
Absolutely. Sorry, I had myself on mute as well just then. So I guess sort of coming from my background, but also I know that you will sort of touch on this in future episodes. Telling a story, I think, is a great way of communicating your strengths. And I think, like I sort of told a story earlier, right, about my time at university. And that's a story I have that I know by heart. And it's great because I can use it over and over and over again in different circumstances to sort of tell a story, paint a visual picture. So they are, seeing me in my strengths, in my element, instead of just hearing about it, and they can sort of, I guess, become more sort of invested in that as well. So I always think just telling a story is and having a time, that you excelled with these things and you proved yourself is really useful, and it helps, I think, give you a sense of authenticity when you're telling it as well.
Yeah, lovely. And Charlie, any final thoughts from you on that, about communicating strengths in an interview? Any top tips you could share?
Yeah, I think embody them, be those strengths. So if you've put enthusiasm as one of your top strengths and you sit there in the interview going like this, and just let your natural self out. And if you're detail orientated and the analytical side is much more you, then just demonstrate that in your thinking. So when they ask you a question, they're not going to expect that, oh, I'm listening and I'm empathetic. If they're looking for somebody who's going to do data analysis and has to be really efficient, make sure you turn up early, make sure you've got all the documentation, just embody the strengths that you say that you've got. And that'll be easy if it's authentically you, obviously.
Absolutely. Authenticity, really, really key, really, really great. Let's move on to our final question then. And how can knowing our strengths keep us motivated? This is a really important one, I think, particularly at the moment with everything that's going on in the world. It's a very demotivating time. It's really testing of our resilience. So I'd love to hear from our panel. Has anyone got any top tips about how knowing your strengths can keep you motivated? Will, did you want to take that one first?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. So, I mean, I certainly know that for me, I've had to sort of know my strengths and remind myself of them just to celebrate myself, which I think is really important, especially, if you've been sort of, I guess, unlucky in professional, your not love, but, the love of your career or whatever over the past year, then it's really useful just to be able to sort of say, no, I am good at this, and I do have a place in the world, and there are opportunities out there for me. I sort of recently just got turned down from a job that I really wanted at the time when I was applying for it, and it was tough. It sucked. It wasn't any fun, and I really felt like I would have been great for it. But what I learned coming away from that is some of the feedback I got, which is that we don't know if this is sort of a right match for what you're looking for. And I realized that as well. And it's kind of a pattern that I've noticed in myself. And especially, I think, coming on the Prince's Trust has really helped me sort of become conscious of this, is that sometimes I think I can do everything. And to an extent, I can do everything, but I excel in very certain things. So, and sort of knowing that now, coming out of that year, I'm now looking for opportunities which I think I'm going to do exactly what I want. And I can find opportunities, and I don't have to compromise as much as I thought I did on those. So I think knowing your strengths can really, pick you up and remember what you're good at, and that there is something out there for you, and you can find it if you embrace those.
Absolutely. Just to keep motivated, reflect on what you're really good at. You all have picked out some strengths that you all possess, which means that they're within you, and so reflecting on that is a really great way to stay motivated, because we know it's really hard looking for work at the moment. So reflect on your strengths and stay motivated. It's really going to make a difference. Charlie, what about you? Have you got any tips about how knowing your strengths is really going to help keep motivated?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the question for all of you is, now you know your strengths, what are you going to do on a daily basis to help them motivate you? So you wake up tomorrow morning and you think, oh, I don't fancy job hunting again today. And then you remember, oh, okay, wait a minute, I've put a little post-it on my wall, or I've drawn a picture, or I've written a rap, or I've done some song lyrics, or some way this afternoon maybe of capturing what your strengths are in a way that will remind you positively every day of what you're great at, because each and every one of you has that set of strengths that you love to do, and there will be an employer out there who is looking for those very things. I really can assure you. So when you're motivated and when you're feeling driven towards it, the energy that you have in whatever you do, whether it's writing a blog on LinkedIn or just reaching out and connecting with employers, if you're doing it from a position of, I've really got this to offer, I think that in itself is going to motivate you. So my top tip would be to have some way of keeping your strengths in your visual space, within your environment, so that you're seeing them every day. And it might even be something like writing yourself a little mantra that says, I love collaborating with people. I'm so kind and caring and empathetic, or I've got detail down to a T. People can trust me. People can rely on me. Or it might be about resilience. I'm resilient every single day. I take the first step. Whatever it is, have your little mantra handy, because those things really, really do work.
Love that, Charlie. That's really, really great. And Will, I've got some positive affirmation for you there from Jake, who's watching. Really good point there, Will. I think everyone should celebrate themselves sometimes. Absolutely. Now more than ever, I would say. We all deserve to be celebrated. Izzy, I know that one of your top strengths is optimism, so I'm sure you've got some great motivating tips for us.
I think knowing your strengths is important, because otherwise you work really hard and you don't necessarily work smart. So knowing your strengths keeps you motivated because it keeps you aligned with what your goals are. But there's 3 things I do, as you can imagine, that I do if I'm lacking motivation or I'm struggling to find my strengths or bring them to the tip of my tongue. So I ask my friends or my family to tell me what they think I'm good at, and I do that in return. And it sounds really silly and a bit cliche, a bit cheesy maybe, but to hear it from someone else reaffirms and reiterates what your strengths are, and it gives you that little bit of a boost. What I do a thing where I'm feeling my very, very best, I write down what I'm feeling, what my strengths are in that moment. When I feel like I've achieved something good, what have I done to make sure that I have? And sometimes it's really just making my bed in the morning and going on a walk before I start my working day. But I know that I feel strong when I do that. So it's reminding myself that I have those mechanisms in place. And the last thing that I do this quite often, maybe too often, but I think about sort of my heroes and what their strengths are and whether or not they resonate with me. So for instance, Michelle Obama is one of my personal heroes. If I'm having a day where I don't feel like I'm being strong, I think about everything she's achieved. I look at my Pinterest board with my motivation on it. There's a picture of her there, and I think about her career trajectory and how she'll have had days where she was lacking motivation, but she picked herself back up. And I think if it's good enough for her, it's good enough for me. And I use people's lessons and I make sure I channel them into my day to day.
I think that's a really great tip as well, to help reflect even more around what your strengths are, because look at the people who you really idolize, like who are your heroes and what strengths do they embody. I think that's a really great way to see what the matchup is to why you like them so much.
Yeah.
And what you're saying,
sorry,
Izzy, with the little things, when you said sort of making your bed, it's so funny because I remember the lockdown. I was just like, well, I might as well. It's a few weeks and we'll move back, so enjoy it. And of course, it wasn't a few weeks off. And then a friend said to me, I've started making my bed every morning. And again, it's a little thing, so try doing that. And I remember, a messy bed is the least of my worries right now. But it's weird. I started doing it, and she was totally right. It just really gets you into something, doesn't it? It gets your gears moving. And I think those things are really important. Just making everything in baby steps and digestible sometimes to help reinvigorate you can be really motivational.
Absolutely. And I think it really links back to what Charlie was saying about having a visual space. If you've really got up, you've made your bed, you're keeping your space really, really active and clean, then it just makes a huge difference to then have your mantras all over the wall as well to keep yourself really, really motivated. I think that's a fantastic place to wrap up, and hopefully you'll all come away from this session connecting with your strengths a little bit better and feeling energized about where to apply them. If you're looking for support from the Prince's Trust, or you want to find out more about the work that our fantastic speakers do, then click the link in the pinned comments to see everything on offer. This series is made possible thanks to the support of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, and of course to all of you for dialing in. So stay safe and join us again next month, where we'll be looking at the top techniques to showcase your strengths in an interview situation. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you very, very soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.